Welcome to CrimePod Castle Unsolved Mystery Series.
Yeah.
Episode 23, I think this is.
23. It is.
Okay, good. I always,
Got to keep track.
got to keep track. Today we're diving deep into a story from the 1970s that feels like it's right out of a political thriller. We're going to 1970s India,
Ooh.
a nation on edge after a period of intense political upheaval known as the emergency, and there's a mysterious death that rocks the inner circle of one of the most powerful families in the country.
Yeah, and the emergency itself is key to understanding this whole case. It was a time when civil liberties were suspended, the press was censored, and you could really feel the fear and uncertainty in the air. Indira Gandhi, the prime minister at the time, she really consolidated her power in some pretty controversial ways during this period.
Wow, it sounds like a tinderbox ready to ignite.
Mm-hmm.
So Maneka Gandhi, she's a rising star at this time.
Right.
Married to Sanjay Gandhi, Indira's son. And she was known for being outspoken and for having a lot of influence. And then tragedy strikes. Maneka's personal secretary is found dead in an apartment that's linked to her family.
Yeah, and the circumstances surrounding his death, they're anything but clear-cut. It immediately made people suspicious, especially with all the political tension. Was this a personal tragedy, a freak accident, or was it something more sinister? And, the authorities weren't exactly transparent, which just fueled all the speculation.
So we've got a suspicious death, a powerful family, and a nation in political turmoil. I'm already getting chills. What happened with the investigation, if there even was one?
Well, the official investigation, it was surprisingly quick, but a lot of people thought it wasn't very thorough. There were rumors about political interference, missing evidence. People were saying they didn't want to dig too deep into what happened. Makes you wonder what they were trying to hide.
It really does sound like they were covering something up. Let's talk about the victim for a minute.
Yeah.
This wasn't just some random person. He was Maneka Gandhi's secretary. So that means he probably had access to some pretty sensitive information. What kind of information could have been so dangerous that someone would want him dead?
That's the big question. We're talking about a time of intense power struggles within the ruling Congress Party and between them and their opponents. Imagine if he overheard talks about election rigging or found documents detailing illegal campaign finances. Silencing him would be a top priority.
Wow. So this isn't just gossip or political maneuvering. We're talking about potential criminal activity, corruption at the highest levels.
Yeah.
Did the investigation even look into that? Was there any sign that he had stumbled onto something really incriminating?
Well, unfortunately, no. The official story focused on the possibility of an accident, maybe some personal matter that went wrong. But with how quickly they closed the case and how secretive they were about it, a lot of people just didn't buy that explanation.
Yeah, that makes sense. It feels like a classic case of the powerful using their influence to control the narrative and protect themselves.
Exactly. And that's what makes this case so fascinating. It reminds us that even in a democracy, power can be used to hide the truth, and those who get too close to secrets can end up in very dangerous situations.
This is like a real-life game of Clue. Everyone's a suspect, and the stakes are incredibly high. Since the official investigation was so questionable, it's not surprising that people came up with other theories over the years. Can we talk about those?
Absolutely. One theory is that the secretary's death was just a terrible accident, maybe a personal matter gone wrong, a tragic mistake, and then those in power took advantage of it to control what people thought happened.
But wouldn't that be an incredible coincidence? An accidental death happening at such a sensitive political time involving someone so close to the center of power.
Right. The timing is definitely suspicious. That's why a lot of people have trouble believing the accident theory. It creates more questions than it answers.
Which leads us to some darker possibilities. One theory is that he was killed to protect some kind of sensitive information. If we think about that for a second, what kind of impact could that kind of revelation have had? We're talking about possible corruption at the very top levels of government.
The implications are huge. If that came out, it could have caused a massive political scandal. Maybe investigations, resignations, even criminal charges. In a system where a small group holds most of the power, exposing corruption is incredibly dangerous.
It really shows you that information is power. And whoever controls the information controls the story. But this wasn't just about protecting the political elite as a whole, right? There could have been rivalries within the Congress Party itself, different factions fighting for control.
Absolutely. And that brings us to another interesting theory, that the secretary was targeted by someone within the Gandhi family's own inner circle. Maybe he knew too much about internal power struggles, financial dealings, maybe even personal scandals.
It's like a Shakespearean play. Ambition, betrayal, and a ruthless pursuit of power. But wouldn't getting rid of someone so close to Maneka backfire? Wouldn't that make her a target or at least bring a lot of unwanted attention?
You're right, it might have. But in a climate full of fear and paranoia, someone trying to grab power might have thought silencing him was worth the risk. They might have underestimated Maneka's resilience, her determination to find out the truth.
It's fascinating how this case makes us think about how complex human ambition is, the lengths people will go to protect their own interests.
Yeah.
You mentioned another theory earlier that political rivals might have been involved. What would their motive be?
In the world of politics, a scandal involving a suspicious death could be a very powerful weapon. Think about the headlines. Gandhi family aide found dead under mysterious circumstances. It would create a lot of doubt, fuel public distrust, and maybe weaken the Gandhi family's hold on power.
So even if the rivals weren't directly involved, they definitely benefited from the chaos and uncertainty that followed. It's almost Machiavellian to use a tragedy for a political gain, but it's also a tactic that's been around forever in politics, isn't it? Creating scandals, undermining opponents, doing whatever it takes to get what you want.
It definitely highlights the dark side of politics, the ruthless way of thinking that often guides those who are hungry for power.
But here's what I find really disturbing. With so many possible suspects, motives, and layers of intrigue, we still don't have a definitive answer. Even after all these years, the mystery of Maneka Gandhi's secretary's death is still unsolved.
And that's what makes this case so compelling, but also so frustrating. It reminds us that sometimes the truth stays hidden, buried under layers of political maneuvering secrets, and maybe even deliberate attempts to obstruct justice.
This case really makes you realize that history isn't just dates and names in a textbook. It's full of real people whose lives were changed by events that often leave us with more questions than answers. And in this case, it wasn't just the secretary whose life was affected. Maneka Gandhi's career, her public image, everything was shaken by this.
Yeah, that's an important point. We tend to focus on the immediate victim, but the impact of a tragedy like this can be so much wider. Think about the psychological toll on Maneka Gandhi, the constant suspicion, the fear for her own safety, the thought that the people around her might have been involved.
It must have been incredibly lonely to be surrounded by people she couldn't fully trust, living under the shadow of this unsolved mystery. Did this event make her more cautious, or did it fuel her determination to fight against injustice? How did this experience shape her political path?
It's hard to say for sure, but it's very likely that this experience had a huge impact on her. Some people retreat after something like this. Others are driven to find answers, to fight for justice, to make sure it never happens again.
It's like a fork in the road. Do you pull back, or do you use your experience to try and change the system? In Maneka's case, she went on to have a long and powerful political career. It makes you wonder if this tragedy, in a strange way, helped launch her future work.
That's definitely possible. Adversity can shape us in powerful ways, either breaking us or making us stronger. In Maneka Gandhi's case, it seems like it ignited a fire in her, a determination to make a difference, to challenge the way things were.
And this case isn't just an interesting story from the past. It raises questions about the nature of power, the abuse of authority, and the importance of transparency and accountability. What can we as listeners take away from this deep dive into history?
I think it shows us how important it is to question things, to not just accept easy answers, especially when powerful people are involved. It encourages us to be critical of the information we get and to look for different perspectives. We shouldn't take things at face value, especially when it comes to politics.
It also highlights how important a free and independent press is. Institutions that can hold those in power accountable and make sure justice is served. Without those safeguards, the truth can be easily hidden, and those who speak out risk their lives.
Absolutely. And this case is a scary reminder that even in a democracy, powerful forces can be working behind the scenes, manipulating events, silencing dissent, and protecting their own interests. It's a wake-up call to stay vigilant, to be aware of the potential for corruption and abuse of power, no matter where we are in the world.
That's a sobering thought, but it's also a powerful one. Knowledge is power, and understanding these things can help us be more informed citizens, hold our leaders accountable, and work towards a fairer and more just society. This deep dive has really been eye-opening. It's a reminder that history is more than just dates and names. It's a tapestry of human stories, power struggles, and the constant search for truth.
Well said. And sometimes those stories are left unfinished, the truth hidden in mystery. But it's important to keep exploring these cases, to keep asking questions, to keep the conversation going. It's a way to honor the victims, to hold those responsible accountable, and to make sure these events aren't forgotten.
Thank you so much for joining us on this journey into the heart of a political mystery. It's been a fascinating and thought-provoking discussion.
My pleasure. It's always stimulating to do these kinds of deep dives.
And to our listeners, we hope this episode has made you curious and encouraged you to explore the world of unsolved mysteries. Remember, history is full of secrets waiting to be uncovered. So keep those minds curious and keep asking those tough questions. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for more fascinating deep dives into the world of crime history and the unexplained. We'll see you in our next episode.